Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So, the topic for today, cultivating interfaith harmony, is actually one of the burning problems of the time. Even though, uh, and especially in Pakistan. So, first thing I want to say is that I'm only going to talk about this topic from the Islamic point of view, not from the Christian or the Hindu or the Sikh point of view. That is because we are in Pakistan and we are the Muslim majority, and actually interfaith harmony is not a problem of the minorities. They are very willing and eager and keen to live in harmony with the majority. It is our problem that how we can. Now, if we were living in some other country where there was a Christian majority or a Indian majority, then things would be different, and we would need to take that into account as to what their attitudes are. But in this country, Pakistan, interfaith harmony is purely a question of how the Muslims behave. If the Muslims behave well, we can have interfaith harmony. If Muslims behave badly, then we will not have interfaith harmony. So it's purely a Muslim issue, despite the title of interfaith. So actually there are many dimensions of this subject, and I will not be able to cover all of these dimensions, but one thing that points to the importance of this topic is that Ibn Khaldun was actually the first social scientist, you might say. That before him, history was just a collection of facts and a record of stories of conquerors and so on. Ibn Khaldun's distinction, which makes him the father of social sciences, as it were, is that he looked at history, but he looked at the underlying forces which drive history. Why did civilizations rise? Why did they fall? And actually it was his theories about this which inspired a lot of literature, and in fact the whole literature on rise and fall of civilizations is based on Ibn Khaldun. So he starts his analysis with the analysis of group cohesion, which he calls asabiya. And so basically the key is that in history, power is controlled by groups. So to the extent that we can have unity, that is the extent to which we will have power. So when the Muslims were united, then they ruled the world, and when the Muslims have fallen into disunity, then we have also lost worldly power. And now actually interfaith harmony is very closely connected with this. Actually, how we behave to each other is a reflection of how we behave to others. So today, it is not that the Muslims are hate the Kafirs and the Christians, it's that the Deobandis hate the Barelvis and the Sunnis hate the Shias, and that's reflected in our dealings with Christians and Sikhs and Jews and others. So it's not. So if the Muslims love each other as they used to, then they also loved the non-Muslims, as which seems very surprising given the current situations. So if you look at history, then history is a history of groups. Individuals, no matter how brilliant they are, no matter how strong they are, by themselves they cannot affect the course of history. They're just too small. It doesn't. One individual, whatever he does, it doesn't matter. However, if the individual creates a group and creates love among that group, then that group can affect history. And so this is what Allah Ta'ala told the Muslims in the Quran, that Allah Ta'ala has created love in your hearts for each other, and this is more precious than all of the gold that if you spend, you could not buy this love. So it is this love that created the unity. And Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran many times that if the Muslims are united, then nobody can come against them. And if they are disunited, then they will suffer defeat at the hands of the enemy. And so today we can look at repeated, if people ask this question, that if Islam is the right mazhab and Allah Ta'ala has promised that He will help the Muslims, then how come we are losing every battle that we fight, and we are getting destroyed and killed? And so how come? I mean, so the answer is in the Quran, that if you are united, Allah Ta'ala's help will be with you, and if you are disunited, then Allah Ta'ala will withdraw His help. That's very simple. So if you look at the fall of empires, you look at Rome. Rome was never a united civilization. It was the Romans were at the top, and they governed all of the races, and eventually, so there are two models. There is the mosaic model, that you take a lot of different pieces and you keep them apart. And Russia, it fell apart because it was a collection of different nations. There was never any unity between them, and so they fell apart. On the other hand, the US has been the leading empire for a long time, and one of their strengths has been, but is no longer, that they had a united model, a cohesive model, one in which all people were integrated into one framework, and there was the ideal of equality and brotherhood. The French Revolution succeeded because they called for the slogans of liberty, equality, and fraternity, and they called for the elimination of the gap between the upper class and the lower class, and the treating of all human beings as equals. So these ideals have been announced, and to some degree, nobody ever achieved it in perfection. Nobody, not even the Muslims. But to the extent that people were able to proclaim these ideas and to follow them, to that extent Allah Ta'ala gave them strength in this world. And so for some time, US had a very strong adherence to this idea, and Martin Luther King came, and he complained about the treatment of the blacks, and it improved after his. But now it has all fallen apart, and all over the world, Europe, USA, minorities are being treated very badly and worse. It is said that the Muslim is the new black. They are the worst treated people, and I mean, if anybody has any contact, everybody knows horror stories of near and dear people who are completely innocent, who were pulled off planes or interrogated or imprisoned for no reason. So at the global level, unity, peace, harmony is important for us to play a role on the global stage. But even at the individual level, a person who has peace, harmony, love for others in his heart, he will live a contented life. And if he hates others and is trying to get revenge, he will, even if he will never have a happy life, successful. Even if he succeeds in getting his revenge, even if he succeeds in getting power, and even if he succeeds in destroying his enemies, you see, this death and destruction never gives you satisfaction. So both on an individual level, for the community, for the nation, for the ummah, for humanity, all of these qualities of unity, peace and harmony are very important. Now in modern history, as I said, you can think of history as a evolution of collection of power. Initially there were small bands of people who were hunter-gatherers. Then they learned how to do agriculture. This is also mentioned in the Quran, that Allah Ta'ala taught agriculture to certain prophets. And so hunter-gatherers would just go and hunt, and they would find their food. They did not actually grow foods or domesticate animals, but agriculture was domesticating of plants and animals, and it led to a much higher level of welfare. The food supplies were much higher because agriculture requires settlement, so larger collections of people arose, and these developed into cities, and eventually the city-state, which uh, became the powerful way of organization, and it overcome feudal societies, because feudal societies were just one man having control over a large number of people, so they could not stand against the city-states, which was a larger collection. Then the city-states gave way to the nation-state, which is the current paradigm, that instead of one city, you have a collection of cities working together, and no city-state could stand in their way. So, in fact, if you look at how the Europe managed to conquer the rest of the world, then a very key element of this is that the rest of the world was organized on the pattern of city-states, small collections, and they were not able to resist the combined power of huge collected process of production and war. So, what is a nation? This is a very important question, and it has been studied and analyzed by many scholars, and they have come to a very surprising conclusion, one which, see, first of all, because we have this habit of materialistic thinking, so we don't pay enough attention to the power of ideas, imagination. So we think that Pakistan is a concrete entity which has a geographic existence and it has boundaries, etc. Actually, Pakistan does not exist on this planet. If the human beings were to disappear, then there would be no Pakistan and no India. It would be just Earth. There is no marker of the boundary of Pakistan. So where is Pakistan? Pakistan exists in our imagination, and our imagination is, and the imagination, the collective imagination of all human beings. That we all agree that there is such a thing as Pakistan. We all agree that we are citizens of Pakistan. Other countries agree that there is a country. So it's a purely idea. It doesn't have any concrete existence. This is very always seems very surprising for the person who thinks of it first, that we think that Pakistan is a material, physical, concrete reality, but it is not. It is just an idea. So a nation is just a imagined community. We think, you see, like I have a community, I know my family, and I know that I have interacted with them for a long time, and so I know who they are. Similarly, in my institution, I know the people, so we have a community. But what about this Pakistan? Well, we have this feeling that there is such a thing, this is an idea, and we have some allegiance to this. We are given some services by this idea, and we, in turn, we provide some, we obey its laws to some extent, and we follow the rules that. So, by agreeing to this idea, we derive some benefits and we pay some costs. So, but it's all in the imagination. So, the nation can be strengthened or weakened by ideas. If we start spreading the idea, as people are, that we are very weak and powerless, and so this will be then the condition of the nation, because the nation doesn't have any physical existence. Its existence. So if the newspapers spread negativity, as they are frequently doing, they weaken the nation. And in fact, the analysis of what is a nation places a great emphasis on the newspapers, because we learn what the nation is, we learn what is happening in the nation from the newspapers, which we all read, and so this gives us a common idea about, okay, what's happening in Pakistan. Yesterday PM resigned. Yes, we all know that. Why? Because it was in the newspapers. Otherwise, in the olden times, when there were no newspapers, the rise and fall of kings didn't matter. After all, It didn't make. We had the same breakfast today, and we'll have the same lunch. So yesterday and today are not very different. What happens in the Prime Minister's office doesn't really affect our daily lives. So it may be an event of no significance. Actually, in the Indian past, the rise and fall of kings didn't affect the ordinary villager, and they didn't know and they didn't care about it. But today, because our nation is defined in this way, so we all care and we think that this is very important because the newspapers say so. If the newspaper said something else was important, that would also have an image and an impact. So the main lesson is that our imagination is very important in shaping the destiny of the nation and the ummah and humanity as a whole. So Martin Luther King, he said that I have a dream that that the blacks and the whites will be equal one day. And so this dream, it is actually these dreams which drive our destiny. Even though as materialists, we don't think so. I mean, we are trained not to believe in ideas. We are trained to think that the future of Pakistan depends on whether we can build industry, whether we can build roads, whether we can build factories. But actually, our Prophet ﷺ demonstrated that the key thing is to build the people. If we build people, everything else will follow. And if we fail to build people, then we can have the finest infrastructure and roads and nothing good will come of it. Now, there is a very interesting puzzle that we don't think about very much because we think about all the things that the problems that we think about are posed in the environment. If these are the questions which are asked by our teachers, we have many courses, so we think about math and we think about chemistry and we think about biology, and to some extent we think about current politics and environmental change and whatever is in the newspapers. That's the issues that we think about. So there is one very important thing which we don't think about because it's not in the newspapers and it's not in the textbooks and it's not in the discussions that our teachers do, and it's not talked about in our families, so it's out of sight, out of mind. So the interesting question, the very important question that we have forgotten to think about is that when Islam came to the world, it was a stranger. Nobody knew what Islam was. And if you read the very famous book and very popular book of Sayyid Abul Hasan Ali Nadwi about what Islam gave to the world, or the fall of Islam and the loss to civilization from its fall, what did the world lose by the decline of Islam? So he describes the world before Islam, at the time of the emergence of Islam. And he shows that it's all darkness. There is no any in Iran and in China and in Persia, all sorts of zulm was happening, and it was taken to be the normal thing that this is how the world is, that the powerful will eat the weak, and whoever has the power to exploit others, it is his right to do so. And the weak also said that okay, if somebody is power, then we have to submit to him. Injustice, exploitation, all sorts of very, very bad things were happening. And there was no message of reform available to say that this is bad. I mean, even the recognition of good and evil was not there. And basically he paints the picture of the world, describing the world history. And then the Prophet ﷺ came with this very powerful message. If you look at the opening lines when the Prophet ﷺ is sitting in Ghar Hira and Wahi starts, so it starts with the word Iqra, read, and he learn in the name of thy Lord who created man from a clot, and Allah Ta'ala taught man that which he did not know. So at the very beginning, Allah Ta'ala says that I am going to teach you things which you did not know. Now what were these things? This is the key question. What were the things that were taught to the first Muslims, who were all they say that it's the period of Jahiliyyah, the period of ignorance, darkness. Then they learned something, which was Islam. Because of that learning, these Arabs who were in a very dark world, they were the darkest of the lot. They were the most backwards people. Chinese and Persians and Romans and Egyptians, they had advanced technologies, advanced civilization, literature, philosophy, large armies, technology, many things that Arabs did not have. Arabs were simple Badu tribes with very simple ways of life and no refinement, no luxury. But with this message, they rose from the bottom to the top. So what was it in this message that caused this change? Is this message, is that thing, whatever it was, relevant for us today, or is it now part of history, no longer relevant? So actually, everybody agrees, including many Western historians, that Islam brought something extremely valuable, and because it cannot be denied. For example, Michael Hart says in the 100 that the single most influential person in all of human history was our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And so his fellow Christians complained that, why are you saying this? We should honor our own Prophet. He said it's not a question of who is most honorable. I'm just looking at the historical facts. Who had the most impact on human history? And there is no question that it was, if we look at one person who changed the history, it was Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So what was it? It was not his personality. I mean, this is the mistake. It was the message. It was not the person, although the message was embodied in the person, but it was the power of that message which changed the course of history. But Prophet ﷺ said that Islam came as a stranger and it will become a stranger. So today, truly, Islam is a stranger to Muslims. And what is worse is that Muslims are enveloped in what is called, our elders used to call it, Jahl-e Murakkab, which is, in English, it's compound ignorance. Ignorance is to not know something. And compound ignorance is to not know something but to believe that you know it. So now the Muslims think that we already know Islam. So if Islam had any solutions to offer us today, then we would know them. But from what we know of Islam, all of the problems that we see, and there are a huge number of problems on personal level, in society, in community, in Pakistan, internationally, Islam has no solutions to offer. So where will we find the solution? We will find them in the books of political science and social science and economics, etc. So we are looking to the West for the solutions of the problems because we believe that the Quran and Hadith have nothing to say about these things. And this is our double ignorance. So, as our poets have recognized, जिस दीन ने गैरों के थे दिल आके मिलाए, उस दीन में अब भाई खुद भाई से जुदा है. जो दीन के हमदर्द बनी नौ बशर था, अब जंग जदल चार तरफ इसमें बपा है. यानी किसी ने कहा कि किसे खबर थी कि लेकर चिराग बूलहबी जहां में आग लगाती फिरेगी कौम मुस्तफवी. तो आज जो है वो मुसलमानों ने जो है वो अबू लहब के तरीक़े इख्तियार कर लिया, उसी को वो इस्लाम भी समझते हैं. इस वक्त मज़े तो ये, तो the question is, what can be done about this? This is the thing that, so for the first thing to understand is that since problem lies in our ways of thinking, it is not something which how will we get the latest technology into Pakistan? Well, that's a difficult job. But to change our thinking, we can do so today, right now, here. And that is how the Prophet ﷺ changed the world, because he changed the ways of thinking of the Sahaba. So, what are the changes in thinking required? The first thing that we need to do is to reimagine our history. So the history that is currently being taught to us and by us is actually a very biased view. We have learned this. There are two problems. There is a vacuum. First of all, what happened in the past 300 or 400 years? Nobody knows. Actually, we have histories. If we read Islamic history, then we can. You always find Khulafai Rashidin. After that, what happened? Nobody really knows, and nobody. What happened to the Abbasids and what happened to the. So very few people know very much about Islamic history. There is a reason for this, because the history that we are taught is European history. It's called Eurocentric history. So according to the Eurocentric history, the world began with the Enlightenment in Europe in the 16th century. Before that, it was all darkness. Nothing important happened. Nobody really had any thoughts. Actually, if you read explicitly, people didn't know how to think. People were irrational. People were didn't have science, technology, knowledge. People had superstitions. It was all dark. Then suddenly, without any apparent cause, the light of knowledge changed the dark ages of Europe into light, and suddenly science and technology and democracy and all good things that exist on the planet today, they were found in Europe. And then after that, slowly Europeans took these discoveries to the rest of the world, and they are still in the process of trying to enlighten us and teach us and bring us out of our ignorance and darkness into the light, that following the journey that they did 100 or 200 years ago. So we are 100 years behind in this race, and the only way to catch up is to follow Europe. So what happened in our past 1,000 years hardly matters, because history didn't start then. History started in 1600. So this history, in which the whole world was barbarians and the only civilization is the European civilization, is a very damaging history. And this history needs to be rethunk in order to arrive at a history which gives all human beings an equal place in the civilization. Now, I have written a lot of articles about how we can do reimagine history, and I would encourage you to go and read them, because this alternative history is not available in the standard European accounts, so which are very biased, and in fact even Europeans have recognized, and the word Eurocentric is used for that. It portrays Europe as the center of the earth, and but I don't have time to go into that, and it doesn't relate directly to our topic, so I will bypass this, but I'll just mention one thing. How did the Enlightenment start? Was it started spontaneously, like there was no cause for it? Can anybody guess? Yes. Yes. Islamic Spain was a very advanced civilization, and it had hundreds of thousands of books in their libraries. And basically, when in 1492, the last Islamic city of Granada fell to the Spanish reconquest, and a huge treasure of knowledge came into the hands of the Europeans. And for the next 2 centuries, they were trying, actually, there was a big problem. I mean, these books were coming in, and they contradicted all their past beliefs. So the church had to set up a very strong censorship board to make sure that heretical thoughts don't enter. And there was a huge battle. You all know about the battle between science and religion. Actually, it was a battle between Islamic teaching and Christian teaching, which was eventually won by Islamic teaching, and this was called the victory of science. So anyway, that's not relevant to our current topic, but this is something which is important to know. That actually the source of all good ideas that exist in the West today comes from Islamic teaching. This is something which is not known, although it's slowly being rediscovered. Many people today, you find, for example, The Theft of History is a book that has been written recently by Goody, which says that Europeans took the great ideas of the other civilizations and then they stole it, they claimed it for themselves. So, for example, if you it is widely said that Descartes, French mathematician, invented the Cartesian coordinates and analytic geometry. This is not true. It was invented by Muslims. You read all of the writings of Descartes and there is no mention of Cartesian coordinates. So this is theft. I mean, and you can find the Muslim algebraists who invented the analytic geometry and algebra, and in many other areas. Ibn al-Haytham was the father of optics, but all of his discoveries, and Newton basically rewrote his book in optics, but Newton is many discoveries are attributed to Newton which were actually given. Newton himself said that I have reached this far because I stand on the shoulder of giants. So a lot of other discoveries have been made which allow me to go this. So who were these giants? These were Muslims, but nobody knows. So this is important to get rid of a fundamental sense of inferiority which has caused a problem in. Yes.
You are saying that the West is actually trying to rethink the history, and they are saying that the Muslims were the cause of the Renaissance in Europe.
Yes.
But even in our culture, when we say this, if we have just said, there are some people who say, why you are saying that Muslims were the source of all? Muslims were in darkness, there was nothing good.
That is the Eurocentric history which says that there is nothing good outside of Europe. So that is the dominant, and whoever has power, they have the power to tell the stories, and the stories they tell are believed. And those people who don't have power don't have the story. So this is called the power knowledge thesis of.
Why in our faith they are saying this? That doesn't make any sense. Why those Muslims are saying that you are lying? Muslims didn't do anything. There are some Muslims who say that Muslims didn't contribute anything to the science. And when we argue with them, those Muslims, they say...
this is just stupidity. I mean, there are lots of stupid people. I mean, the facts, you cannot argue with the invention of any massive amount of mathematics and science. All of the origins, biology, medicine, Arabic textbooks were taught in Europe for 2 centuries. So, if somebody denies that there is no sun, we don't need to argue with that. So, the fact is that it is true that the reason that the Muslims are saying that today is because we see no sign of this today. The origins, as I said, Islam is today a stranger to the Muslims. What Islam did, how they did it, we don't know. We have no connection with that Islam. And yet at the same time we believe that we are Muslims and we understand Islam and we know Islamic teaching. So this is the disconnect. So the issue is that today we are very far from the past, the glorious age of Islam. The question now is not that our past was glorious. The question is that today our present is very miserable. So how can we make our future better? Can we change the social norms? So many success stories exist. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ is the most shining example. The society at his time was extremely wild and extremely barbaric. The Prophet ﷺ brought civilization to these people. These were people who buried their own daughters alive, which is an extreme of barbarism. And the Quran says that you have become people who feed others while remaining hungry out of the love of Allah. So this is something which can be achieved, that people who are very ignorant, whose hearts are full of hatred and they are constantly fighting each other, these people can be changed into people who feed others for the love of Allah. So this change can be done. So at least it is possible. Then the issue is, how can we actually create this change? So what are the steps that we need to take?
Excuse me, sir, I have a question.
Yes.
I'm slightly confused on certain points. As like I beg to differ from the opinion people generally say about religion and whatnot. I think everybody has their own subjective ideas. I think just a small question, that this whole idea of developing harmony, don't you think it should be beyond the level of religion, culture, traditions, or anything that we follow? Because humanity comes in the top. I could be wrong, but I think that if you talk about harmony, you don't really have to see or ask the gender or the religion or the spiritual belief or anything. It's the humanity that matters. After that, you just mentioned something a few minutes ago, that a nation is like an idea.
Yes.
And I think if we are four people sitting in the same group, having one common thought, we could be known as a nation because we are following the same ideology, right? So I think the idea of harmony should be beyond this, constraints of following a particular religion, Islam or anything.
This idea that you are stating arose in Europe after there were a huge number of battles between different sects of Christianity, and so they decided that religion cannot be a basis for unity. And so the secular modern worldview arose, in which they said that we have to build a religion of humanity. Specifically, these words were used by the Bentham, who was the inventor of modern utility theory. And in the religion of humanity, the key principles were that everything which makes you happy is moral and good, and if things cause pain, that is immoral and bad. And this is something, he said, that all humans would believe. And in a society where Islam was not the dominant religion, one would approach, as I said, I am taking an Islamic point of view, I am not taking a Sikh point of view or a Hindu point of view or a secular point of view. If we were living in a secular society where people did not actually fast and did not, then the approach to harmony would lie in exactly along the lines that you are suggesting. But in an Islamic society, if we try to build on secular ideas, these do not appeal to the general public because they are actually in conflict with many Islamic ideas. So then most of the secular modernists in Pakistan are stuck in this trap. I mean, like the feminists, they appeal to ideas of Western feminists as the uniting ground for women, and they fail because these ideas are not ones that appeal to our public. They could build a case for protection of women and for empowerment within the Islamic framework. It is easy to do, and if they did that, they would succeed because those are the ideas that appeal to the general public. So it depends. I mean, if your religion of humanism, it depends on the audience. And now if you want to say that let's get people to, this is actually the European understanding of the world, is that religion is a superstition and a disease, and it is an obstacle to development, and it should just be eliminated. And first we eliminate people, we teach people that this Islam that you believe, this is a false religion, you should stop believing in it, it has only caused damage and death and destruction. And then once you become atheist, then we will teach you how to unite on atheistic principles. Now this is something actually was predicted in the 1970s. Modernists said that religion will just wither out and die, it will disappear because it is just superstition, and once the light of knowledge shines on the world, which comes from reason and science, the religion will not exist anymore. But this has not come true empirically. Empirically, if you look at what has been happening, the secular ideas have driven the world to the path of destruction. According to the environmental scientists, the world is fated to collapse, become uninhabitable for human beings. in 50 years or so. And the reason for this is because the secular religion teaches the worship of the nafs, and it says that everybody should do whatever they can to get pleasure, because that is the highest good, that is the sole morality of the humanist religion, that if it gives you pleasure, then this is good, if it gives you pain, then it is bad. That is the only moral value. So now if you accept this as moral value, then it doesn't matter if you destroy the planet, if you can be happy. It doesn't matter if the next generation never never comes into existence, because what do you care whether they live or die? So the humanist religion has become, if you just look empirically at global trends, you find that religions have been gaining strength contrary to the predictions of the seculars, and the secular way of thinking has been losing ground. So within the Pakistani context, if we want to work on interfaith harmony, we can work either within the Islamic framework, that how we can, or we can work outside the Islamic framework. If we work outside the Islamic framework, then it's basically, it's a alien vision. It's another form of colonization. That okay, I'm teaching you how to think. You better not think in the way that your parents and families taught you, and your culture is all worthless hogwash, which should be destroyed in order to make way for the new world. So this is not going to work. It has failed to work. So the better process for reformation is change is to work within Islam, and to recognize that in Islam there has been many terrible things have been done in the name of Islam. There is no doubt about it, and many good things have been done. So we get to choose our history. We can say that the good things are the Islam, and the bad things are the deviations from Islam. And if we do that, we will create a history, just like the nation is an act of imagination. So Islam is also an act of imagination. If we say that yes, Islam is about barbarism and killings and jihad, and then we will say that this is a bad religion and we should get rid of it. We can say Islam is about adl and insaf and rahmatul lil alameen, mercy to all nations, and it's providing its compassion and hospitality and charity, and then this will create the history. So it depends on what story we tell about our past as to what we think Islam is. So in our present day Pakistan, there are lots of weaknesses and lots of strengths. So today we hear all about the bad stories and all of the things that went wrong, and all of the murder and looting and rapes, and these are all plastered over the newspapers. All of the good things you don't hear about because they don't make news. So actually there are a lot of good things about Pakistan. When foreigners come to Pakistan, they are very surprised that they think that this is a country of terrorists, and they are very surprised at the amount of warmth and hospitality that they receive. I can personally testify that Americans who came, who were my friends, they were amazed at the level of hospitality and warmth that they receive. In many, Quran is full of exhortations to give in charity, to aid the poor. This is more than all 5 commandments, Hajj, Roza, Zakat, etc. combined. And many empirical studies show that the Muslims are the most generous groups in the world as a whole. There was a study in Britain, there was a study in US, that the Muslim subgroups give the maximum percentage of income. At the same time, there was an interesting finding that the Muslims think of themselves as the worst. So there is a very big mismatch between the image and the reality. The Muslims give a lot, but they say that we don't do very much in this regard. So there is complete unanimity. It could be that we don't. Islam teaches us not to brag, not to feel proud, and so that is certainly a possibility. So there is complete unanimity in our culture. I'm saying that if we want to change things, then we have to create new norms, and we have to focus on our strengths. We have to spread that. Instead of saying we are a nation of terrorists, as somebody said in Dawn, we are a nation of cockroaches because there was some horrible incident, and horrible incidents do take place. But the fact is that horrible incidents take place in all societies. In Germany, in USA, one youngster goes and shoots 17 kindergarteners. So they don't say that we are a nation of cockroaches, but here we are. If something happens like that, something very bad, definitely horrible, but so we become a nation of cockroaches. That's not true. I mean, there is good and bad in all societies, and if we see something bad happening, we should try to take steps to prevent it. If you think about why it happened and think about what we can do to change it, rather than saying that we are just a nation of cockroaches and so cockroaches will do like this and so there's nothing to be done. So actually, so what are the strengths? We do have a lot of strengths. I mean, there is complete unanimity in the society from top to bottom that we should help the poor and the weak, and these are Islamic ideals, that the strength of the strong is not meant to oppress the weak, it is meant to help the weak. So we have examples which are unparalleled in the whole world. We have in this hospital, which is a hospital where there's no cash counter, anybody who comes in can receive a treatment at the most modern level without having any fees. Actually, this is one of the fundamental and underlying concept of Islamic civilization, which governed the world for 1,000 years, that if there is any child who needs an education, it is the responsibility of the society to provide him with that. And for 1,000 years there was never any, I mean, the concept of tuition fees did not exist. The responsibility was on the society to provide an education to all children, and healthcare also. It was provided free of charge. The first hospitals were built by Umar Raziallahu Ta'ala Anhu because of this recognition. This one of the revolutionary ideas which we have forgotten that Islam brought to the world was that the ruler of the people is the servant of the people. Even today, this is acknowledged as in the name. The names are left, the structures are left, but the spirit has gone out of them. So the king of Saudi Arabia is called the Khadim al-Harmain Sharifan. He is the servant of the. So this is the name. So even the name is left. So this is something. The concept is there, although the practice is no longer there. Today, Chairman Mao displayed the qualities of the Islamic leaders by living in a simple way and driving on bicycles. Actually, Iranian leaders are doing something quite similar in terms of having simple lifestyle, and so the practice is also there and the appeal of that practice is there. So the question is how we can achieve more in that direction. So basically this thing comes from what is admired. If in the society any quality is admired, that quality will come into being. If we start to admire people who have big houses and cars, and regardless of where they got the money to buy that, then people will go after those things. If we admire the good qualities, then people will strive to develop the good qualities. And so the thing is that in all societies there is good and bad mixed together. So if we project the good and think of the bad as an exception, then we will create a good self-image, and that is what the image is what the people want to live up to. So, as I said, there are many strengths that we have, even though we are not very well aware of them. And the question is, how can we leverage this strength? How can we build upon it? How we can increase it? So there was this Ceylonese woman who once gave a talk that impressed me deeply, and I have used her paradigm ever since. And she said that, development is like motherhood. That when that you praise and encourage. You see, if the child starts to take a step, he takes a wobbly steps and he falls. You don't say, "Oh, you idiot, you're so clumsy." You say, "MashaAllah, you took one step, even though there's 1,000 things wrong that he did. If you pick up that one little promising beginning and you praise it, that encourages the child." So development is also like that. That okay, we have 1,000 bad things happening, and maybe everybody in the tax department is corrupt except for one. So if we recognize that one person, and even maybe that he's only half corrupt, if we recognize the half part that he is doing correctly, and we praise that, this will encourage. On the other hand,
मुझे याद है बड़ा अफ्रीका है जिसको उबंटू कुछ इस तरह का लफ्ज़ इस्तेमाल
उबंटू, हाँ,
कि एक शख्स जिसने कोई गलत काम किया होता है उसको इकट्ठा किया जाता है, पूरी सोसाइटी, फैमिली या बल्कि जो कम्युनिटी उसके गिर्द जमा हो जाती है और उसको बजाय लान तान करने के उसकी सारी खूबियाँ उसको गिनवाई जाती है, तुमने ये अच्छा किया था, तुमने वो अच्छा किया था, इस तरीके से वो शख्स को एनकरेज करते हैं.
This is exactly. This is a perfect illustration of the idea that I was trying to convey, that instead of actually what is happening today is that we are highlighting defects all the time. Yani when you 5 people get together, oh Pakistan mein ye burai hai, wo burai hai. Exactly, the media is playing, that newspapers are playing an important role, but we also, all of us are part of this. We can, I never go to a party where people are talking and not finding one negativity after another. And nobody knows about the positive things that have been happening. So we should understand that if we say that, okay, all Muslims are bad and Islam is bad, etc., and we are just evil people, we are cockroaches, we are violent by nature. So these are the things that will happen. And this is not a way to change things. This is a way to create further damage. Yes.
उसमें मैंने जो मटेरियल पढ़ा कॉन्सेप्ट से मुताबिक वो इन चीज़ को बहुत ज़्यादा बिलीव करते हैं. जितना मटेरियल या उनके जो गैलप्स है उनमें पता चलता है कि more than 94% of the women in West, they are religious in one way or
another. Oh, absolutely.
हाँ. क्योंकि जो moral values हैं और जिस तरीके से वो सोच है religious therapy क्या लीजिए pastoral therapy या counseling, तो वो सारे इसको जैसे वो bridge कर रहे हैं.
Yes.
Values और science एक दूसरे से बहुत रिलेटेड है. बल्कि आप देखेंगे वो कहते हैं कि counseling psychology is the understanding of human beings.
Right.
Or religion is the direction to the human beings.
Absolutely. As I said, the trends, the secular modernist thought that secularism would prevail and religion would finish as a superstition, but actually the opposite has been happening. People have found that the pursuit of pleasure is the least pleasurable thing in the world. That if you go after wine, women, song, and all of these pleasures, you find that these things ultimately don't get you the pleasure that you are seeking. And so people become disenchanted, and then they look to other philosophies, religions, and so this is what's been happening. If you look at the trend, you find that everywhere in the world, globally, people are getting more and more into religious and further away from secular, because they tried it and it failed. It did not deliver the goods that it promised. So we, especially as teachers, have a very important role to play because actually one word of the teacher has a lot of effect on the lives of the students, and we can all know stories about how students tell that one student gave one lecture and that changed my life, it turned on. So we have to incorporate lessons highlighting our Islamic tradition of tolerance, not our current situation. Also, we can look at in actually, it's not that it's all dark. There are lots of very good examples. So instead of highlighting the bad, we can focus on the person who goes around Islamabad, gives blankets to the people who are sleeping in the cold, the people who are lots of people in doing feeding the poor and doing lots of charitable, people setting up schools in poor areas. I mean, alhamdulillah, lots of activities happening, and actually part of it is that the Islamic tradition says that you just conceal your activities. So a lot of things are happening, and the people who do these good things are not advertising in the newspapers, as opposed to the NGOs who help one widow and then using $1,000 and then spend $100,000 on a campaign with large posters and newspaper ads showing that how look we have helped a widow, and so this is the ratio of projection. Actually, it's known that in NGOs, 80% of the money that is spent goes to the NGO, and 20%, if 20% reaches the target, that is a good NGO, and it can be low as 5%. So we have actually a lot of things to build on. So one important point that I wanted to say is that contrary to, the materialistic idea creates the idea that our past is written in stone, we cannot change it. So it means that if the Muslims have done very bad things, and we can certainly find in history many examples, then that's our fate and destiny, and this is what will happen, and there's nothing we can do to change that. So actually that's not true. We can we write our own history. Europeans have written a history for us which we have accepted, but we can rewrite that history. It's up to us. We can choose the facts which we highlight about our past, and this is often thought of as glorification, and there is a subtle difference between glorifying the past and the strategy that I am suggesting. Yes, you had a question.
Can establishment of justice be a solution to all these problems?
I personally don't think so, but that's a complicated question, because I think that I am interested. You see, the conclusion to which I have come is that this life on this planet is just a struggle between good and evil, and it will never conclude successfully with success of the good, because that is what justice would entail. It is only a process. This world is a trial for us, so the only thing we can do is to participate in the struggle for the good. We cannot necessarily change the outcomes. Maybe the evil will conquer over the good. The only thing we can do is to be a part of the good, and so justice will only be done on Yawm al-Qiyamah. It will not be done on this planet. This is not promised to us that justice will happen. It is possible that the good parties will fail and they will be defeated.
The fact in Islamic history, we see how it was established and how it was impacting the society.
No, we should. I'm not saying that we should. I think that struggling to achieve justice is one of the core commandments of Islam. So we are definitely charged to do justice, and we are charged to do justice at a very high level. Do justice even if it goes against your own interests and your interest of your family and nation. So this is what we need to do, and it's a very difficult demand. So it is. The struggle for justice is a very important part of the solution, but achievement of justice is not. Absolutely. So as I was saying, that if we think about the resources that we have at our disposal culturally, we have a tremendous amount. We don't have any shortage. We have a rich heritage of ideas which can allow us to both be tolerant and to preach tolerance and to invite others towards tolerance. So the Quran and the Hadith, Islam is the most tolerant of all the religions that I know. Allah Ta'ala says, La tasubbu alladhina yad'una min dun-" Don't insult the gods of the kafirin, because they might insult your God for one thing. And the Surah Kafirun, it says that I don't worship what you worship, and you will not worship what I worship. So let your religion be yours, and let mine be mine, and we don't have to fight about this. The outcome will be decided by Allah on the day of judgment. I believe that you will come to a bad end, but it doesn't mean that is only out of compassion and love for you that I am trying to tell you the right way. But la ikraha fid din, there is no compulsion. I cannot force you to do what I want. So the essence of Islam is that the Prophet ﷺ said that I have been sent to this earth to teach the best conduct, and there is so much emphasis on this good conduct towards others. The Muslim is one by whose hand nobody receives hurt, and by whose tongue nobody is hurt, and the character, that is akhlaq, exceeds good character exceeds the tahajjud of the nights and the fasting of the days. So today we have misunderstood religion. That is, I said, Islam is a stranger. The reality of religion lies in excellence of conduct. It doesn't lie in retiring to the mosques and doing 1,000 nafils. Yes?
So you refer to Eurocentric history.
Yes.
And also about the Muslims' achievements and what the Muslims have done. Do you agree that there have been some parallel strands of history in the Muslim world itself based on the sects that we are...
I said that we have forgotten the teaching of Islam, and today...
You believe in that history, that particular stream of history, as an article of faith?
Yes, that's what I'm saying, that history is a construct. It is not written in stone. We can revise that history, and we need to revise that history. We need to focus on the strengths of Islam in terms of tolerance. If we write our history as a history of intolerance, that is what will be created. But in our history there are many golden examples of tolerance.
An article of faith.
I mean, who has taken any?
The Sunnis, the Shia, the Ahl Hadith, the Barelvis.
Yes, this has happened.
And now we are following that particular...
So we can liberate ourselves. This is what we are here for.
How do we do that?
Yes, this is our choice, personal choice. Today I can say that I don't agree with this idea about Islam, and to me Islam represents Rahmatul lil Alameen, was our Prophet, the one who was mercy to all nations of the world. So he cried when he saw a Jew who died, and his companions were very surprised that how come you are crying over a Jew? He did not, people insulted him, and he returned the insults and the injury by doing favors. And this is actually hadith, that if somebody does harm to you, do a favor to him. So this is Islam, and if somebody is doing the opposite, then we don't agree that is Islam.
So we stop right there.
What?
Prophet ﷺ, and then the different
No.
streams.
We say that there is an ideology, this is the ideal. Muslims have been trying to achieve, and they have sometimes failed. Maybe they have failed mostly. It doesn't matter. The North Star serves as your guide, even though you can never reach it. So if we strive for high ideals, and we say that Islam is about striving for that high ideal, then this can change our own conduct, as it did in the past. So there is a lot of strength and resources that we can derive it from the past, and it is not all washed out. There is a lot of strength of these ideas which are actually being practiced today by many people, although these are unknown and unhighlighted in the discourse. So we have to change this discourse. We have to change the way of talking. We have to change the negativity. If like you see, the projection makes a big difference today. And if you ask Americans that about terrorism, they will say that yes, Muslims are terrorists. Now actually, if you look at the global statistics, you find that of all the terrorist incidents, Muslims do a very small percentage. Even in the USA, if you look at all the mass shootings that occurred in 2016, you find that a very small percentage of these were done by Muslims. More than 90% were done by others, some crazies of different types. So to say, but nonetheless, the public perception is that all of them are done by Muslims. So there is a vast gap between image and reality. The truth is that America is spending millions and billions of dollars fighting terrorism, which is basically stopping these few incidents. But the probability of a human being dying in a Muslim terrorist attack is less than the probability of being struck by lightning in the USA. So what is the image and reality is very different. So Islamic ideals provide powerful safeguards for minorities. There are many parts of the message that are about the protection of minorities, and in Islamic history, the civilization of Spain and in the Ottoman Empire, the treatment of the minorities was the best that has ever been seen in this planet. So it's not that these are impractical ideas. There are books about Islamic Spain and about the Ottoman Empire and how they were much better at treating minorities than Europe is today. And this is not that this was something that occurred and it has been surpassed. No, Islam has never been surpassed in terms of its good treatment of minorities.
People are involved into good deeds despite the religion they follow. That's true that we have the ideology of Islam, but I think majority of the religions, they teach good things.
Yes, absolutely.
That's your subjective choice whether you follow it or not. So being a bad person in the name of religion is probably the most stupid thing that can ever come across.
Unfortunately, it is happening today. So, but it is I agree with that. So what I am saying is that there are lots of strengths that we can call upon which are currently unknown, because we are highlighting the weaknesses and we are not picking up those things in our past which we can use to build upon. Just like, as I said, the motherhood theory of growth, there is a lot of strength, there are a lot of good things. We have to recognize and reward and encourage those good tendencies in order to make them bloom and flourish. So in the Misaq-e-Madina, which was the constitution of Medina, there was a guaranteed rights for the Muslims. Prophet ﷺ forgave bitter enemies. The Quran counsels us to do good to our enemies so that they will become our friends. In the hadith it says, if your neighbor is hungry, you should and you fill your stomach, then your prayer is not accepted. In Medina, food was given to kafir prisoners while the Sahaba remained hungry. And these were the people who had come to kill the Sahaba. So this is the level of good treatment of enemies that Islam has shown. And also, kindness and compassion are general. If you have it in your heart, then you will put baby birds back in their nests. And the Prophet ﷺ berated a Sahaba who was abusing his camel. And so these are properties that the Prophet ﷺ himself, Allah Ta'ala counsels him that, oh my Prophet, will you kill yourself with sorrow if these people don't listen to what you are saying? So I mean, his heart and these. So this is talking about the level of love in the Prophet's heart for the unbelievers, not for the believers, that he was so sorrowful about them. So this is the thing that Quran says, that there's this man who was stoned to death by the kuffar, and when he reached the Jannah, he says that, oh, I wish that my Qawm could see what I am receiving, so that they would not be, instead of feeling anger and revenge towards them, he is feeling that if they could see what I have received, they would find their way to guidance. And this has been the way of the prophets. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. When the Qawm hurts you, you don't curse them, and instead you pray for them. And this is the way of the prophets. So here is, for example, in the constitution of Medina, Banu Ghaffar, who were a Kafir tribe living near Medina, they will be deemed as having the same rights and same liabilities as the Muslims. The Prophet guarantees the protection of Allah and the protection of His Prophet over them and their possessions. If we call them for help, they are obliged to help us, and if they call us, we have a duty to help them. This treaty will be valid until there remains a drop in the sea to wet a feather. So, I mean, this was the level of the rights given to kuffar by the Prophet himself. So, what I'm saying is that we have a very strong tradition to build on, but nonetheless, as many people have said, this is a tradition and it doesn't seem to exist in the current reality. Today, there is a dramatic contrast between what was our history and what is our present. So the Mashal Khan atrocity, many acts of intolerance we can all cite, and these are all in the newspapers about how people killed others for just no reason. Now this type of intolerance should not be highlighted. That is harmful. At the same time, we cannot ignore it. We have to see that this is a symptom of a disease which exists, and we have to treat this, and we have to find the solution. And as I said, I think the teachers are extremely well placed to solve these problems. So let me focus on the Mashal Khan atrocity, because that's of direct relevance to the universities. So atrocity is well known to everybody, but I am more concerned about the second level of atrocity, which is even worse. And the second level is that many people supported this, and they did this in the name of Islam, and the murderers also thought that they were acting on behalf of Allah, which is really a very serious misunderstanding of Islam. There are false narratives in national TV. People who represented Deen came on and said that yes, Islam condones this kind of act, and they presented stories from ahadith to support their views. So the fact is that all of these, the action that we need to take occurs at many levels. First of all, there's the global picture of Islam, that Islam is about the welfare of mankind. It's about bringing benefits to mankind. It's about doing good. It's not about doing bad. It's not about killing people and sending them to Jahannam. It's about saving people and sending them to Jannah. It is about crying for people who you are unable to save, like the Prophet did. It is about giving your all so that others can find guidance. So it's all about doing for others. It's about staying hungry while feeding others. This is the spirit of Islam, and there is no doubt about it. So now, now how can people create the wrong narrative? It is exactly like the situation about Islamic terrorism. In 1 billion people, if 100 people do terrorism, so you say all of them are terrorists. So exactly, if you have 1 or 2 hadiths which show something bad which happened, you say, okay, this is what Islam is. So, for example, in the particular, if you look at the reconquest of Makkah, Fateh Makkah, this has been a shining example throughout the ages to Muslim commanders who took cities, and you can document this heavily, that whereas in the Roman tradition and in the Western tradition, when the people of the armies of the Crusaders took Jerusalem, they killed everybody, and they write that our knees were up to the knees of our horses were in blood, and they would take babies and smash them against the walls, and they write about this openly and proudly. So in contrast, when Salahuddin Ayyubi retook Jerusalem, he protected all the Christians, and he built them ships and sent them back to their homes, and he treated them very well. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ had done this on the occasion of Fateh Makkah. So who was forgiven? Hind was forgiven, Wahshi was forgiven, he had done atrocious deeds. Abu Sufyan was treated with honor, even though he had done terrible amounts of torture to the Muslims. Now, two persons were ordered to be killed. One of them, and I'm saying this because we need to deal with micro details as well, because this narrative is being spread. So one person, he was said to be killed, and he was in the Kaaba, and he was dragged out of and he was killed mercilessly. So why? Now the thing is that first, this was one person. If people say that it is because he was used to insult the Prophet, this is a very silly thing, because everybody in the Makkah used to insult the Prophet. If insulting the Prophet was a cause for killing him, then nobody in Makkah would have been spared. Here, it was not because of the insults. The Prophet ﷺ himself was insulted many times by all of the people that he spared, and he forgave, and he treated with honor and respect, and he made ihsan towards them. He gave them gifts in order to woo them, and this is mentioned in the Quran as a concept, that mu'allafatul qulub, that you turn the hearts which have hatred towards you, you give them gifts to make them full of love towards you. So you transform the hearts. So why were these two people killed? Well, it was not because of the insults, as the narrative goes, because this is used to support the murder of Mashal Khan. So we need to know, because our students will ask, and this is very surprising that people think that this is what Islam teaches. So Allah Ta'ala acts through the prophets. Khizr alayhi salam killed an innocent child in the Quran, and he said that the reason for this is God commanded me to do so, because this child will grow up to be somebody who will be harmful to his parents. So as it is, an innocent child who dies goes to Jannah. So Allah Ta'ala says in the Quran that you did not blow this dust of the kafir, I did. And many actions that the Prophet, you did not cut this tree, but I did. So Allah Ta'ala ordered that these two people should be killed. Why? We can't say. We don't know. I mean, maybe they were going to be the source of fitna. Maybe there was something they had done, but we don't know. Allah Ta'ala acts in strange ways. But only two people were killed, and all of the great insulters. So the idea that anybody who insults the Prophet should be killed, this is ridiculous. It's against actually the Hanafi mazhab. Yes. Blasphemy law is wrong. It is against the Hanafi mazhab. There is a whole story about how it came to be. This is pure politics. It has nothing to do with religion. And people argue that it's actually based on a misquotation. I mean, the law is based on taking a very senior alim, scholar who had written about this, and he quotes that some people say that a Muslim who insults the Prophet should be killed. However, this opinion is wrong for such and such reason. So they take that quote. Some people say is omitted, and this is wrong is omitted, and the middle quote is taken that Muslims should be killed because of blasphemy. And they say that, look, Zainul Abidin said Muslims should be killed. It is found in his book in such and such page. This is such a blatant error that it's just unbelievable. And why it happened, there is a whole somebody has investigated the politics of how this took place. I think we are out of time, and there's a lot of... Oh, I didn't actually follow the slides. I was following the slides in my presentation, but not over there, unfortunately. So that is unfortunate. Yes.